What's going on, guys, and welcome to the first episode of the Who Would Win series. This is the series where I'm going to pit two Dynasty Warriors characters against each other and see who would come out on top in a 1v1 duel based on my analysis. I'm going to pull in as much information as I can from every source possible, including the historical and, of course, the in-game information. Now, before we jump into the video and the different things I want to talk about for each character, we're obviously doing Wei Yan versus Mr. Taishi. I want to give credits to a channel where I found a lot of other historical information or little bits and pieces that I didn't know about each character from a channel called Three Kings. If you have not checked them out, or if you guys want to learn more historically about each Dynasty Warriors character, who, no matter who they are, if they're an NPC, whatever it may be, go check out his channel. He's got a lot of good videos, a lot of good information. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump into this one-on-one duel between the Beast of Destruction, Mr. Wei Yan, and then the Master Archer himself, Taishi. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the historical information. Alright, so we'll start off with Wei Yan and his historical information. Wei Yan was a prominent general. He started out as a foot soldier for Liu Bei, who then rose as to the rank of general, as a pretty high-ranking general within his army. So he started from basically nothing and worked his way up based on his own merit and talent and skills. When he became a general, when he became trusted by Liu Bei, and even Zhuge Liang in history, Zhuge Liang actually, I believe, had a liking towards Wei Yan and not the disdain in the games. He was entrusted with many big responsibilities, including holding down Hanzhong after the Battle of Mount Dingjun, and he held that region down for quite some time using a strategy called the double gate strategy or the heavy door strategy. It was extremely effective to the point where after Wei Yan was dismissed from his post and others took over, people were adopting it and using it. There's also lots of information out there of the many victories that he's had over the Wei forces during the northern campaigns. For example, he was ambushed by Guo Huai and Fei Yao and actually ended up successfully defending and beating both of them in battle. In one instance as well, from one source, Wei Yan is actually reported to have killed a Wei officer by the name of Wang Shuang. And during the Battle of Mount Qi, he ended up defeating Sima Yi's forces, killing thousands and seizing thousands of resources from weapons and armor. And in the Battle of Wuzhong Plains, I believe Wei Yan was reported to have led the vanguard with, I believe, 60,000 troops. So Wei Yan was always in a position of leadership, at least when he rose up to general, and he was always entrusted to do things of high responsibility that I believe really shines a lot on his character and how he was as a general. He's obviously going into battle with these people. He's not just, sitting in the back commanding the forces. I'm assuming for most of them, especially when he's killing certain generals, and he has the track record that goes along with that. I'm assuming that he was also in battle. There was nothing specific in terms of historically dueling anyone or fighting anyone, but there was one thing that was mentioned that from the Three Kings video is that he ended up fighting Shu Huang before the Battle of Mount Dingjun. So there's a little skirmish there. Shu Huang, I believe, was either defending or attacking. I can't remember which one, and Wei Yan ended up dueling a character of that status. Definitely a prominent figure. A lot of information for Wei Yan in his history. Let's go ahead and move on to Taishi. Now, Taishi is a little bit different from Wei Yan. He doesn't have as much information. He seemed a little bit more inactive versus Wei Yan. It was also during the earlier periods of time, the Yellowstone Rebellion, even the earlier pieces of the Three Kingdoms period. So perhaps because of that stagnation kind of period, it didn't really allow Taishi to really branch out. But from what I've read and from the things that I've seen, Taishi obviously will start off with him dueling Sun Ce to a draw. It was reported that he ended up charging a group including officers like Han Dong and Huang Gai, I believe. He ended up dueling Sun Ce one-on-one, and as Taishi was charging him, Sun Ce either killed his horse or stopped him completely. He disarmed Taishi pretty quickly while Taishi grabbed his helmet, and before the duel really got heated from that point on, it was broken up. It was reported that the duel was concluded as a draw, so Taishi out the gate with his historical information, fighting, going toe-to-toe with someone like Sun Ce, and you can really infer that he had some really expert hand-to-hand combat if he's going against someone as valiant as Sun Ce and holding his own. And then the only other couple things I found about his history was in reference to his archery abilities. So again, Taishi is a master archer. During one of his expeditions, he shot a rebel who was hurling verbal abuse at Sun Ce after he joined him, and he shot him in the hand with perfect accuracy, sticking his hand to like a piece of wood that was behind it. And then the last big thing he did in history was rescuing Kong Rong from an enclosement by the Yellow Turban Guan Hai. The ploy to get the jump on the Yellow Turban was to go and feign practice, like he was pretending to practice archery, and he ended up repeating it for 3 days. So the first day, the Yellow Turbans jumped up thinking that he was going to attack them, and he went to go set down this little target and started shooting it with arrows. Second day, same thing happened, only half of them got up. And then by the third day, nobody assumed anything, just another day of, practice target, whatever it may be. He ends up shooting and killing several rebels before escaping the enclosement in order to get reinforcements to save Kong Rong entirely. And then it was also noted that Taishi defeated a character by the name of Liu Pan in battle, and that's pretty much all I have for Taishi's historical information. So when I look in terms of historical information, we've got Wei Yan with a lot of different feats and accolades, and we have Taishi with merits of intelligence and being pretty crafty on his feet in order to gain an advantage in a situation that I believe was reported to be like impossible to escape, and he found a way to get out of it. Now, in my opinion, from what I've concluded just from the historical information, I believe Wei Yan has the advantage over Taishi just because we don't have as much information with Taishi. Wei Yan did a lot more, he carried a lot more, he did a lot more things in history. So if we're looking just on the basis of the historical alone, I think I would give the edge to Wei Yan. I think he has a lot more experience than Taishi, and he would, just in history, because he's not the same character in the game, would come out on top against a little bit more inexperienced Taishi. So 1 point in favor of Mr. Wei Yan. Alright, next up, moving into the game now. Alright, so we started with all the historical information and everything like that. Let's talk about in-game now. We're going to start with in-game weapons. So we have Wei Yan first up with his double bulge. So I don't want to bring powers, quote-unquote powers, into the duel, right? I want to include the athleticism or the movement or whatever it is that makes the characters themselves with the weapons, but I'm not going to include the lightning element for Wei Yan or the fire for Taishi. I think he has fire, or like the slash, whatever it is, right? I'm going to try and pull those away. So no powers, nothing, no rage mode, nothing like that. I'm going to look strictly based on the movements and the weapon styles that they have within the games. So Wei Yan, double bladed bulge is a very good weapon, big AoE, clears out a lot of enemies. We can see his proficiency with the weapon, and he poses quite a threat on the battlefield with his double-bladed bulge. I think he would pose a threat for pretty much anyone he's going against one-on-one. It's got the range, it's got the two-sided blades, and he's got an arsenal of moves that are pretty much unpredictable in a way that somebody might have a hard time keeping up with. Then we move over to Taishi with the twin rod. So more of a disciplined character, more of a refined kind of character. He's not as crazy, not as janky. He's definitely going to make calculated moves in terms of reacting and I believe attacking when it comes to someone like Wei Yan. Within the game, for the most part, his moveset is, I would say, a little bit more simpler. The range I would say is about short to medium. He's not going to be more of an offensive fighter. I feel like he would be counter, defensive, enduring whatever he can for the offensive from Wei Yan in order to come out on top at some point with his twin rods. Now, if I'm looking at both characters objectively, we have Wei Yan with his double bulge and his crazy movement. He moves around a lot more versus Taishi, who I see as more of a steady, stable kind of character, stays in one spot and plays more of that defensive counter game because he has such smaller range. So if I'm going off of just their in-game weapons, and if I were to guess on who I think would come out on top, I would have to again give the point to Wei Yan. I think Wei Yan's weapon style is superior to Taishi, and I think he would find a way to get past Taishi at some point. So I'm going to have to give the point in terms of the in-game weapon styles to Wei Yan. Now let's quickly talk about in-game accomplishments, in-game feats. Alright, start off with Wei Yan once again. So Wei Yan obviously kills Han Xuan after the false accusations towards Huang Zhong, or the threats to kill him. He ends up killing him. Dynasty Wars 4, he comes up behind him, slices right through him. And then Dynasty Wars 7, he just says he does it. But he ends up killing Han Xuan and relieving that city before joining Liu Bei. Then in Dynasty Wars 5, Wei Yan ends up defeating Zheng Wei in a one-on-one match. It's not much of a match, we don't get to see much of it, but he obviously disarms him, and he's in the position to kill someone like Zheng Wei, which is a big deal. I think Zheng Wei is a really talented fighter and doesn't go down that easily, but Wei Yan was pretty much on the verge of dispatching him. Then moving on to his next one, during the Nanman campaign, he captured Meng Huo on about 4 or 5 different occasions, Some of them were solo, some of them were like just mainly his contribution. Other times it was him and Zhao Yun. Again, it's another character that he bested one-on-one, and he also had a few battles with Lady Zhurong, who is also, I would say, an underrated character when it comes to her abilities. I would not underestimate her in a fight. Him going to battle with Lady Zhurong, it was unclear whether or not he won or not. But I would say Wei Yan has quite the track record when it comes to in-game feats over certain characters. The one caveat for Mr. Wei Yan within history, and I think within the games as well, is that it was, from what I've read, he also has a lot of defeats. There's a lot of situations that he got himself into situations where he got ambushed or pushed back, or he was put in a defensive position and he ended up getting beat. I would say his win to loss ratio is about 50%. Now moving on to Taishi C, and again going back to the duel with Sun Ce. Sun Ce being one of the strongest characters within the game. He held him to a draw. In some games they fight multiple times, but him going toe-to-toe with Sun Ce and not like immediately perishing is an incredible feat within itself. In Dynasty Warriors 5, Taishi C is also known to match Zhang Liao's might and actually ends up driving him back. I believe it's in his story or in the Wu story that it happens, so it's hard to say if it's canon because the actual events of that story shifts depending on who you're playing, but it does happen. So he does have that advantage where he fights someone extremely powerful like Zhang Liao and manages to drive him back. And then that's pretty much all I have for Taishi C. There's not much else. Again, he's disciplined. He's an expert level martial artist who excels in hand-to-hand combat. There was no records of him losing besides, obviously his death, but there was no records of him losing in the game itself, even within history, and he does have that one edge over Wei Yan. So in terms of in-game feats, I would say Taishi C has the advantage over Wei Yan in terms of the people he has fought and his track record. Even though it's not as lengthy as Wei Yan and there's not as many records for him, I still think that Taishi C, and when it comes to in-game accomplishments, has an advantage over Mr. Wei Yan. So I'm going to give the point to Taishi C. Alright, next up we're going to talk about, I want to put these two together because there's no point in doing both of them separately because I think they're just too small to do separately. Now we're going to talk about martial arts skills and the intelligence of both the characters overall from both sources, from both history and from in the game. Starting with Wei Yan. So Wei Yan's intelligence I think is underrated, obviously within the game, because he's made out to be this brutish, barbaric, just doesn't know what he's doing kind of thing. I think the reason that they did that is because within history, when he went to Zhuge Liang to suggest certain plans, he would consistently be denied. So I think it was because Zhuge Liang didn't think the plans would work that he would consistently deny him. I don't think it was a lack of trust. I just think that he thought that his plans would not succeed. So with situations like the Hanzhong incident where he held down the territory for a while, he had the double gate strategy or the heavy door strategy where he was basically pincering any enemy units that would come through a certain area and absolutely obliterate them. I mean, the place couldn't really be invaded that much at all, and he held it down really, really well. There was an ambush he wanted to execute at Chang'an, a strategy to ambush the units there and kind of pincer, I believe, and Zhuge Liang said no to that. There was another incident where he had an idea for Wuzhong. I think it was in like moving across the river and like pincering Sima Yi's forces. Again, got rejected once again. Because he was rejected so much, that led to, because some people would say that Wei Yan was egotistical or he was arrogant in a way, but I think it's just because he was denied so many opportunities to try and exercise his own strategies, and I think his intelligence is a little underappreciated or underrated. Now when it comes to his martial arts skills, there was honestly nothing I can really find on Wei Yan's martial arts skills or how he excelled in a certain martial art or if he was good with his weapon. I'm just assuming that he was, because he went to war, he battled, he fought, he succeeded, right? So I'm assuming at some point during those battles he was fighting on the battlefield, successfully killing people and successfully leading his army to victory. So when it comes to martial arts skills, it's really like a question mark for me. I'm not sure of Wei Yan's martial arts skills. The only thing I can go off of is his in-game characterization. Even with the double-bladed bolt, he doesn't have a lot of martial arts movements. He does, it's there, but it's not as disciplined or trained as some of the other characters. So when it comes to martial arts skills, I think Wei Yan is lacking just a little bit, just because I don't really know, and there's nothing that I've read that really would point to how well endowed he was with his blade, whatever he used. So I don't really know. Moving over to Taishi C though, we have, starting off with his intelligence, I think again Taishi C is another underrated character when it comes to intelligence, because you don't really think about either one of these characters being very intelligent, but because of what I said earlier about the historical information and him coming up with an idea against an odd that that it was explicitly said to Taishi, or at least it was around their camp, that their situation was hopeless. It was impossible to escape the enclosement that the Yellow Turbans had put Taishi and Kong Rong underneath. It was impossible to break out. He found a way to break out of that situation and then came back to rescue him. But Taishi basically had nothing and had to find out a way in order to push through it. Then fighting Sun Ce one-on-one in battle, whether that be in the game or in history, takes intelligence, because he has to react and have the reflexes to obviously not be killed by Sun Ce. I don't know if it was a straight hand-to-hand combat, but I'm assuming it is to the death. It is trying to find and kill, the other character. So for me, in order to have that reflex and reactiveness, whatever it be, he has to have some sort of intelligence, which also seeps into his martial arts skill. Taishi was a master archer, which takes training, takes discipline, which Taishi had, which again lends to his martial arts skills. His archery, being able to go one-on-one with Sun Ce. He's not shooting arrows at that point. They're fighting hand-to-hand combat, so he was adept at both archery and hand-to-hand combat, or even weapon. So obviously, looking at Taishi's information versus Wei Yan's, I'm gonna have to once again give the point to Mr. Taishi. So now we're all tied up. We're going into the last segment, Wei Yan versus Taishi. This is the last piece that's going to decide whether or not who comes out on top, right? So we have the X Factor. So each character within the Dynasty Warriors series has a unique X Factor about them. For Wei Yan, his X Factor is his barbaricness. You don't really know what he's going to do, and I would say if Taishi went one-on-one with Wei Yan, or anyone for that matter, they wouldn't really know what to expect from him unless they personally fought him in battle or saw him at a distance, whatever, and saw him fight. But because I think he has the unpredictability of his movement, his barbaricness, you don't really expect him to move like a normal fighter, right? He's got janky movements. He's got things that would catch a normal person off guard. If they were going on a one-on-one duel, if Taishi is charging in on him, I think he would have some sort of understanding of that, but it would still not be easy. Moving over to Taishi's X Factor, I'm going to give his X Factor as being a master archer. That's going to be his X Factor. Now, within the games, they don't really play on that at all. His twin rods, along with his discipline and like his sturdiness, could be his in-game X Factor. But if I'm giving him an X Factor for this, it's 100% the master archery. I think in combination with his twin rods, he would have a bow on him, right? Because Taishi just seems like that kind of character. In Total War, I believe he has both of those things. And I believe that's how Taishi would fight Wei Yan. I think he would come in with both. I don't think, because of how honorable he seems to be in history and of course within the games, he would do a similar approach to that of Sun Ce, and he would fight one-on-one. He'd pull out his twin rods and he would go head-to-head with Wei Yan until he looks for an opening to maybe shoot his arrow and get an upper hand on him. So now, we've got all 5 points done. I came up with 5 categories I thought of. Now we need to figure out who would win. And before I announce the winner of who I think would win, I want you guys to take a look at this. That's right, as you guys just saw, I would give the win to Taishi. Now, it was closer than I thought. Initially looking at it from a bird's eye eagle eye view, I'm like, Taishi versus Wei Yan. Taishi's got this in the bag. No big deal. This is going to be an easy win. But I was reading more information about Wei Yan and learning more about Wei Yan and things I didn't really know, including Taishi as well. I realized that the match was actually a lot closer than I thought it was. It's actually a lot closer than I thought. I think these two, if they actually fought and you compiled every source of information in game and history, I think it would be a pretty close match. I think Wei Yan would definitely give Taishi a run for his money, but overall, I think Taishi would eventually come out on top against Wei Yan. But that's all I have for the first episode of the Who Would Win series, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't appreciate it, like, comment, or subscribe. Let me know down below, who do you guys want to see next? Who's the matchups you guys want me to analyze? We'll get to the next few episodes here really soon. I'm excited. These are really fun to do, and I'm super excited to get the Dynasty Warriors characters pitted against Samurai Warriors once I get really comfortable with the SW characters. Other than that, that's all I have, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, everyone.